This is CBS Sports HQ presented by Verbo alongside Jacqueline DeAugustino. I'm Tommy Tran. We know the NFL moved the Browns-Bills game from Orchard Park to Detroit Thursday afternoon in light of that severe weather in western New York.
Yeah, so Tommy, I was like deep in the Bills community Twitter feed, and I was seeing all these videos of thunder, snow, and just like crazy video, and I kept seeing the word rare and snow from Bills, the Bills fans. I'm like, if it's rare to the people in Buffalo.
If they're saying it's
exactly,
a big deal, it's probably a big deal.
This is the real thing, right? Also, we'll talk to our NFL insider, Josina Anderson, in just a moment about it. But she was tweeting about the hourly forecast in Buffalo, hearing that snow is supposed to just keep on falling until noon on Saturday. Now, the Bills that were planning to travel to Detroit on Saturday, but wind gusts, not only the snow, wind is also expected to make traveling a bit more difficult for them to get out of Buffalo. Head coach Sean McDermott said those details are, quote, obviously TBD at this point. He said that in a press conference earlier today. And right now, let's bring in our NFL insider, Josina Anderson, to talk about everything that's happening with the Bills. Josina, we mentioned it off the top. They're tweeting out that they're canceling practice today. They're meeting virtually because of that weather. There's now a possibility that the team might not be able to fly out to Detroit. So, Josina, what is the contingency plan if that happens? What are you hearing?
So I think, first of all, what stood out to me about what you were just saying leading into this is the folks in Buffalo talking about some of the rarity with the conditions that they're currently seeing. And that's something, right, with people in Buffalo saying that. But what it also points to is the fact that this has been known for a while. And so with you saying that the NFL announced this on Thursday, with this having been in the forecast for a while, we now find ourselves in the predicament of what we have been reporting today, which is that the practice for the Bills was canceled. There's a travel ban currently in that area. And so what it does is it illuminates questions relative to their travel tomorrow. The source that I spoke to this morning said it has been a major impact on their preparation. At that time, they didn't know when they would be able to meet virtually. They had questions about their travel for Saturday, if everybody would be able to make it to the airport, if they would be allowed to take off relative to the conditions, and if the conditions would allow them. What we know now is that it's supposed to be snowing up through tomorrow as of currently to noon. And then there's at least supposed to be a period where it subsides, but the winds are expected to still gust up to 23 miles per hour in that span. So then even if the snow subsides, the question is it really smart for them to travel? And relative to the time that it took for them to make a decision or even maybe just announce the decision where they were going, Detroit always made sense. When you think about the fact that this was supposed to be, a home game in Cleveland, that's obviously not far for the Browns. It's indoors. This is a place that they've used before when they've been in that situation. So to me, maybe at least could have announced that earlier, but you also want to recognize the fact that there is a lot of negotiations when it comes to that relative to securing Ford Field, the accommodations in the hotel or what have you. But I've seen a lot of people on Twitter asking, why didn't the Bills leave sooner relative to knowing this forecast or even when the NFL did announce this. The other thing that's coming up is that if for some reason they are able to get out safely and they're not delayed, in terms of just getting to the game, is what will happen when they're also trying to leave. So let's just say the game goes on as scheduled and as it's planned, even though the snow is supposed to subside completely as of the current forecast at midnight rather, the day of the game. So leading into Sunday, you still have the temperature hovering around 25 to 27%. So obviously degrees rather. So obviously that's below freezing. So what are the road conditions when they come back? And then you consider the fact that they have Thursday night football in the same location. So that's when I was asking, does it make sense for you guys just to stay in Detroit Thanksgiving week and not to go back? And then the same source had told me that the plan as of the time we were talking was for them to go back and come in, but you'd have to ask the question, how much would their preparation, travel, safety, and all those things be disrupted relative to getting back home and then also having to get back out again?
And Josina, like you're talking about some of the forecasts already for Sunday that obviously these sources already know about. At what point do they call it? Like, hey, we're going to stay in Detroit, or we are going to head back. At what point do you expect them to make those announcements?
Well, I just think the best thing is exactly what the league source said, is that the situation is fluid. They have to be in contact not only with the NFL, but local officials. If we had the weather person, come on, maybe they could also provide more insight as to, if the residents have to adhere to the travel ban, but the team is allowed to go. I'm not personally, up to date with regards to those regulations. But what we do know is that the situation is fluid. I'm sure Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, and the top officials from the Bills will be relaying what they feel are not only their preferences, but what they, just feel is safe for their entire team. But we saw Von Miller also tweeting out the road conditions and also the weather conditions from what looked to be his home, and then, some of the things that he was doing to just pass time. So this is always, a precarious time relative to the travel as we are in November and getting to December. And I don't remember what year, but I do remember there was a team, and I can't remember which one, and maybe someone will say it afterwards, but I do remember they were coming into Green Bay and they were on the plane and they were stuck for a while on the plane relative to the conditions. So even if you get in and all that other stuff, or you're able to get to the airport, can you get out? Can you get back in? So there's just so many questions relative to the current thunderstorm in Buffalo.
Yeah, we just showed you the radar there, the pictures. It's all just absolutely crazy. So wishing that they're all staying safe there. Josina, switching gears to the Washington Commanders. They're on a short week. They beat Philly in an epic win there on Monday Night Football, and now taking on the Texans on Sunday. Chase Young, he's been rumored to return for weeks. Now, Josina, are you hearing that he is going to play? And what's been the holdup with him?
So Ron Rivera just spoke to the media and said that if they do activate him tomorrow. So obviously that means, if he's using the word if, that it's still up in the air, that he would be labeled as a game time decision for their game. We know that Chase Young suffered that ACL injury in week 10 and has been working feverishly to get back and help the team. He returned to practice November 2nd, and that opened, per NFL regulations, a 21-day window for them to make the decision as to whether he is going to be able to come back. That 21-day window deadline is the 23rd of November, which makes it next Wednesday. So relative to his gameplay, if he is going to play in the game, that decision has to be made by tomorrow. But the overall decision relative to the season has to be done on Wednesday. So we'll see how that goes. The one thing that I do think is interesting is right now the Commanders defense ranks 9th in total defense, 12th in rushing defense, and 15th against the pass. And with Chase Young, relative to the time that he was drafted in 2020, their pressure percentage with him was 34.1 and their sack percentage was 7. But without him, going back to week 10 when he incurred that ACL injury, it's 36%, so 34 versus 36. And then the sack percentage is relative the same. So that's not to say that obviously Chase Young doesn't have a big impact. We know he had 7.5 sacks his rookie year. But what I do think it does is underline and is a testament to the work that at least Ron Rivera and the defensive coordinator have done on the defense relative to just holding the fort until he gets back. But with some of the recent momentum they've had, particularly with Taylor Heineke, clearly they would love to have their top first round prospect from 2020.
Absolutely. And moving along to the Cardinals, they host the 49ers on Monday night. Kyler Murray's availability in question after a hamstring issue, and then Colt McCoy battling a knee injury. Now, Josina, is this something that Cardinals fans should be monitoring, given that that game is just a few days away?
Well, we know that Kyler Murray was put on the injury report with a hamstring injury on the Wednesday leading into week 10. Obviously, he was listed as questionable, but Colt McCoy started that game. They did win that game with Colt McCoy starting 27-17. Now, what I am hearing, though, leading into their Monday night game is that there is some concern relative to his availability and potentially not playing again and Colt being the starter. But to illuminate Colt McCoy's performance when he did get in there as starter last week against the Rams, he was 26 for 37. He completed 70% of his passes, had 1 touchdown, no interceptions for 238 passing yards. But one of the things in talking to a source about the impending situation with the Cardinals that they pointed out was not only his efficiency, but more interestingly, his average time before the pass. When Colt McCoy was the starter, he had an average time before the pass at 2.19 seconds. That was the second fewest among all quarterbacks last week. And just to give you some context, by contrast, Kyler Murray's average time before the pass was 2.63 seconds, which ranks 21st among all quarterbacks this season relative to the duration of the season. So what one of the sources was pointing out to me was not only his efficiency, but his quickness with getting the ball out, the efficiency of the offense with Colt McCoy, which, some people observed as well. So just something to keep your eye on. And not only that, but his efficiency downfield, 2 for 3 for 51 yards on passes that were 20 plus yards or more. For contrast, Kyler Murray this season, 10 for 40 on such passes, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions on balls 20 plus yards down the field. So another thing. And then Rondale Moore with Colt McCoy was able to have a season high 94 receiving yards as well. So even though there is concern and significant concern about Kyler Murray's availability for Monday Night Football, that also is to illuminate Colt McCoy's performance and also some of the things that stood out to people relative to the operation of that offense when McCoy was behind center.
All right, and that is our NFL insider, Josina Anderson, breaking down all of the headlines for Week 11 in the NFL, including that crazy weather that we're dealing with in Buffalo. Now you can watch the Jets Patriots and Eagles Colts on CBS at 1 p.m. Eastern, and then in the 4:25 slate, it is the 8-1 Vikings and the Dallas Cowboys. You can also stream all of that action on Paramount Plus.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.